what's on my mind. Hello and welcome to episode 28 of The Boxing Show with me, your host, Rob Tebber. As always, I'd like to remind everyone to please like, comment and subscribe. Turn your notifications on for more boxing content. Now that's out of the way, I am joined once again by Mr. Barry Jones and Mr. Andy Clarke as we look ahead to the rematch this weekend. Liam Smith versus Chris Eubank Jr. 2 in Manchester. Guys, we've just done another podcast. We're not going to waste time and go through the pleasantries. They're great. They're brilliant. They're both healthy, and they're looking forward to another 2 hours of.
I don't feel as good discussion. As I did earlier on.
I feel a little bit more tired now and overworked, but
bored actually.
Yeah, boredom's probably the right adjective. Yeah. Okay, they're both great. We're looking forward to the show this weekend. Liam Smith versus Chris Eubank Jr. 2. Barry, going to come to you first. Love a rematch clause, don't you? Obviously, this one is...
this is fine, this one, though.
I was just about to say, this one is not for a title, so it doesn't hold anybody else up. But a rematch that you're looking forward to?
I am, yeah, because it's just, can Liam do the same thing again? That's the question. I think, I thought he could win the fight. I had him a favour as soon as it was announced. I was in Sky when it was announced, I think. And I said, yeah, Liam Smith straight away. Didn't even question it.
Just the first fight? The
first fight, yeah. I said Liam Smith straight away, but not that way. That was the only scenario I didn't see coming. And I would say honestly, most people would say the same. If they thought Liam was going to win, it wasn't going to be that way. It was going to be like, I think he'll win this Saturday. I still think he'll win. It'll be making Eubank work harder than he wants to work, or making Eubank work when he doesn't want to work. That's his strength, Liam Smith. Eubank has a great engine, and he throws blistering combinations when he wants to, or maybe not as much as he used to now, but he still does. But he throws him when he's ready to throw. So Smith will make him, I always think, make him work when he doesn't want to work, and that's what will make him lose his shape and tire out. And Smith's extremely fit, he's tough, and he has really good technique. He's neat and tidy with his work. There's nothing flashy or outstanding that people don't think he can. That's why people don't think he's not a good boxer. He's just a pressure fighter. But actually, he's a very good boxer. Good feet. He's not a dancer, but he slides into the distance really well. His judgment of the distance is really good, and he's willing to block and counter off them as well. And that's a toughness he has. And he's bigger than what you think. He's grown into he's been a super welterweight for a long time, and he's been struggling to make that weight for a long time. So the move at the middleweight wasn't the biggest task as everyone thought it was going to be. I would say that. But the knockout in the first fight for me was, the finish, the start of the finish, was Eubank not looking at the target. He was trying to use the ropes which is not a bad thing, to slip and slide out of trouble. But he came up. I think he came up on one of the movements, but his body twisted, and as Liam Smith's here, he's looking there, and then takes a shot. I think a temple shot. I think, if I remember rightly. Yeah, it was, yeah. And that's how it started to unravel. He didn't see the shot coming, so he's going to unravel. And because Liam Smith is a very focused fighter, he's accurate with his shots when he follows through. He don't miss with too many. So when you're trying to move out the way, he's watching you and hitting you every time you think. So yeah, I think it'll be I think it'll go distance this time, and it'll be a tougher fight for Smith. But I still think he wins. I think he wins by a decent distance.
Andy, we've kind of gone round the houses a little bit this year. We've seen obviously Eubank Jr. linked with Conor Benn. We've seen Liam Smith. I think he was ordered by the WBO to box Yanibek Almahanoli. I think he was installed as number 1 contender for the WBC middleweight title as well. But we have ended up here in a roundabout way. Liam Smith always said that, if I have to beat him twice, I'll beat him twice. And he now has the opportunity to this weekend in Manchester. Looking forward to the fight? Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to it. And, I'm not just saying that because I'm up there all week. But what I find fascinating about it is, and we talk about this a lot, how has Eubank been able, or has he been able, and we'll find out on the night, to recover and reset from what happened in January? Because I'd forgotten until I watched some stuff last week, just the extent to which in the build-up in that first fight, he played on the fact that he had never been dropped, he had never been stopped, he had never been hurt in the gym or on the night, whereas Liam Smith had been. And he went on and on and on about it, the fact that he got stopped and stretched out by Canelo. It was such a big thing for him. And now it's happened to him. How does he get past that? How does he get over that? Publicly, he's got to return to and has the same kind of bulletproof persona he's always had. And he's talking about how it was a freak occurrence and all that kind of thing. But privately, he has to be thinking something different. And I don't mean torturing himself, but if he's going to learn anything from it and make it less likely to happen again, privately his stance does need to be different, because it was really interesting to hear him say afterwards, a while afterwards, I think, when they were maybe doing the gloves are off for this one, and I do find the words that people pick sometimes really interesting. Over-analysis of it can be a bit pointless often, but sometimes there's a point to it. And he said, I never would have believed that could happen. If he'd said, I never would have believed that would happen, fine, because no one thinks it will happen. You have to tell yourself it won't happen. But to have thought that it couldn't, of course it can. You speak to any fighter and they'll tell you it can happen. It doesn't mean that they think it will, but that level of realism that it can happen, I think you need to have that. It doesn't make it some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that it will, and you don't think about it every second of the day. You're probably not thinking about it on your ring walk, but some fighters just keep it in mind because they feel it makes them sharper. But to think that it couldn't happen to you, it has happened. And whether he can come back from it or not, go straight back in with the same guy in the same venue, that's what really gets me excited about this fight, because his career's on the line here for Eubank. If he loses again, it may be dependent on the manner of defeat, but if he loses again, then his career, in terms of where he would want it to go, is basically over. And Liam Smith will be only too happy to end it, because they're not for each other, are they? No. These are two guys who are never going to be friends, like down the line with like Carl Froch and George Groves are now pals. That's not going to happen with these two. Not a chance. No, they are very, very different people as well as different fighters. Barry, going to come to you. Obviously, the kind of notion that this can't happen to you. That we hear from more and more now. I think from fighters, look, I've visualized this fight 1,000 times in my head. I've visualized picking myself off the floor and winning, or some fighters will say I've visualized myself losing the fight, and kind of go through every eventuality. For Eubank now, and it's something that you didn't box after Freitas, but like not being dropped and not being put down or hurt or badly hurt in your career, and then it happening to you. How do you anticipate that potentially changing Chris Eubank Jr.? How does it change the fighter's mentality? Well, the hardest thing for it is, he's been in fights where he's been aware of, listen, like when you're with a guy who's naturally bigger or puncher, say George Groves, that if I make a mistake here, I could be done. Even though he's got a good chin, you'll know that. But against Liam Smith, who's a correct puncher, but he's not a big puncher on paper for sure, then you tend to think, well, he's not the smaller guy coming up, and he's not noted as a KO artist. He's not going to hurt me. That's the last thing I got to worry about. So I worry about he's going to be faster or smarter or quicker, whatever it is. Throw more punches than me and things. So that would have been a shock. But now he knows all the other things he had to worry about. Potentially what Liam Smith can do. He has to add that into the equation as well. It's all down. I think it's all down to. It can be different for every single boxer, I would say that, but how you're built. He seems a man who walks around supremely confident, but we've seen that before with guys walk around like that, and inside of they're different people. It's all a facade. I think he is generally confident, and if you can be pragmatic about it, like what I just said, he turn his head. If he takes something like that, for instance, well, actually, yeah, that's what I did. Well, no wonder I didn't see the shot coming. I don't make that mistake again. But you got to watch the fight through yourself. You got to have someone saying, "This is what you did wrong. This is what you did. You should have done this." But you got to know your mistakes before you can move forward.
Otherwise, you make the same mistake again. Liam will force you back onto the ropes, and then when you're trying to slip and slide and be clever, which might work all the time against someone who's not just going to throw loads of shots, who's going to pick his moments. He's not going to lose his focus, even when you're throwing punches back. Because like I said, Smith is tough and he's clever and he's compact.
It's calm under fire as well.
Yeah, thanks. I should say that. Yeah, but he'll throw neat and correct and he'll be accurate with his shots. So you can't just do the rhythm thing. You have to genuinely slip a shot. Not just move, and then it looks like you're slipping shots, but actually the guy's just aiming for where your head was last, and he's doing the work for you, really. That's what it is. Otto Wallin, Fury did against Otto Wallin, did all this movement like this, but Wallin was aiming for where he was last, so it looked like he was making him miss and slip, but he wasn't. He was making the movement before he threw the punch. Does that make sense? So, and he sort of that sort of movement, and he learned that I can't mimic what Roy Jones could do, because I haven't got the vision and the focus to do it. So he needs to do what he does best and throw lots of punches, keep it long, use that whipping jab. He was having success with the jab, and he can keep it long, but he needs to keep moving. Without ideally, if he can push Smith back, that's what would be good for him. But a fast start is imperative because that'll make him feel more comfortable and settle in, and then it's all about concentration for Eubank then. More importantly, because that lacked, and that's where he got caught, and that's where he started to unravel. And once Liam Smith's got you, he's not going to let you off the hook. He's just not going to do that. He's not built that way.
That side of Chris Eubank Jr. kind of, I think it's fair to say that we've spoken about this several times, even when Andy predicted he'd be a world champion.
You never know.
Still time.
There is still time. There is still time. There's not time to get it done before the end of last year, but there's still time.
It's quite open, that division now.
The pandemic ruined you. That post-pandemic ruined you.
All sorts of variables came into play there to scupper me.
But what I was going to say before I took a dig at Andy Clarke was that we've all kind of had this opinion, I suppose, about Chris Eubank Jr. and what he should and shouldn't do, and looking back at him as more of the attritional come-forward fighter and, being physical, getting close and letting his hands go. A lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of that is predicated on having a granite chin. Now that chin has been cracked in spectacular fashion, and you can talk about the elbows and the weight and the this and the that and whatever. Does that play a factor here with Eubank going back to what I think everybody considers to be kind of the best version of him, that attritional come forward fighter, but now he's been knocked out and has shown very real vulnerability? Does that prevent him from fully doing that, do you think?
It can. I think it would, and it would be most, because then you're not being direct or positive or aggressive with the same confidence, because you have that in your back of mind. I can't get a shot here. Where before you would just go, I'm okay. If he hits me, I'll fire back straight away. And then you were like, but I'm not sure. I still think he has got a good chin still. Again, so what I said, he didn't see it. He wasn't looking. He was on the temple. He wasn't looking in the direction. And then the damage is already done then. So every other shot that follows then has more of a dramatic effect. You're already hurt. You're already weakened. So, it's great fun. And all the elbow stuff is rubbish. Like, I'm not having none of that. He was hurt with shots. And the elbow might have caught him. I'm not saying that happened, but I think he was already done. Yeah,
he sort of had that where he bounced off the ropes and then gets caught with the right hand, and then it's the uppercut and then the left hook that finishes it, innit? So
the fact that Liam Smith is naturally a dirty fighter because he's aggressive, he comes low with the head, and and he'll use the elbows inside and stuff like that. But if you've got an opportunity to land a punch or an elbow, you're going to throw the punch first. If you're a UFC MMA fighter, or something like that, then you might say the elbow is more impactful than the punch, but not when you know how to punch correctly. I would say that it's a sharp thing, but also to be able to throw an elbow and get with technique and the confidence that's going to hit and get away with it. By the way, all at the same time. You're just going to do what you know how to do. You know what I'm going to be. I can land with the shot. I know how to throw a shot properly. I know I can get all the leverage into the shot. I know my feet in the right distance. You've got to adjust your feet to get closer with the elbow. All that stuff. Like, it's too much. You wouldn't think that way, especially when you're involved in a fight. You're just going to throw, and if the punch misses or skims, then that will come over. That will follow through. That happens. And I know some fighters who've been able to do that on purpose, by the way, but the follow through. And he might do that. He might have trained about that. But I mean, that's not. This fight's too important, too much of a hard fight for him to be focusing on things like that. tricks.
Yeah, he's become world champion. He's boxed Canelo. He's thinking, well, for this fight, I'm going to try and work on the elbow.
Yeah.
Like Mike Tyson says, doesn't he? He said he's a bioproduct. It's like the biomechanics of punching means the elbow has to be involved. If you're throwing a hook, you want that elbow up and coming across. It's naturally going to be there, isn't it?
Yeah. It's people have been hit by elbows like that for ever since there's been boxing, basically. So what I'm fascinated about it, what fascinates me about it, is the fact that I feel like he can get over it mentally. Eubank, he always has presented himself as being, mentally robust, and it's not so much that, because anyone can say stuff, but when you talk to other people about him, who saw him in the gyms in Las Vegas when he was young, by himself, I've not met anyone who said anything other than he's the real thing, like, this is for him, as people like to say. We can't know for absolutely certain whether he'll be the same after being stopped for the first time, but I feel like he can get back in there and be as unaffected as you need to be, and maybe it will convince him. It can be quite liberating, from what I'm told, for an athlete for the unthinkable to happen, and for it to be maybe not as bad as they thought it would be. And in boxing, if you've got anything in your mind that's inhibiting you, where your fear of the embarrassment of something happening, if you like, it can be too big, is what I'm saying. It can be too big. If you've got that more kind of fatalistic approach whereby you accept it can happen because this is the sport we're in. Like I said at the start, it doesn't mean that you obsess about it to the point where it becomes more likely. I think it just makes you a bit more realistic and a bit more rounded and possibly a bit more switched on. So I'd just be so interested to see what we get from him stylistically, because you do kind of feel like we need to see what genuinely was the old Eubank. Sometimes people are very revisionist about what fighters used to be, but that was what he was relentless and unafraid of taking a shot, and throwing bundles and bundles of his own. And Roy Jones, kind of after that first fight, did say, although people didn't really pick up on it too much, that was what he wanted him to do, and it just wasn't what he actually did. I mean, he's got another trainer now in Bomac, of course, and I'm sure he'll be in heavy demand this week for interviews and all that kind of thing, but ultimately, what difference can that really make in terms of the amount of time they've had together?
Yeah, I mean, we were going to come on to that slightly later, but as you've mentioned it there, let's pick up on that. Chris Eubank Jr. has made changes to his team. We were out in Las Vegas a few weeks ago, of course, for Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford. So, I mean, right up until that point, Brian McIntyre is going to be focused on Terence Crawford. So, when was that? End of July the 29th. So he's had at most 6-7 weeks, 6 weeks probably tops with a new trainer. As it always kind of seems to be, Barry, there always seems to be something really with the Eubank camp. I mean, there was the kind of, initially it was like David Haye was involved. David Haye and Roy Jones. As far as I'm aware, that's not the case anymore. You've now got Bomac who's gone over there. It seems as though, like Bomac, of course, has done a wonderful job with Terence Crawford, the best fighter in the world by a lot of people's estimations. But how much can you change in a 6-week window? Are we seeing Chris Eubank Jr. going for the Vogue in the news kind of hot trainer of the moment? It seems as though it's an unwelcome change so close to such a pivotal fight.
Well, in this stage of his career, at this stage of his life, he's not going to change dramatically anyway. He can't. However athletic you are, at a certain age and a certain time of doing the one thing, you're sort of stuck in your ways. And maybe that's why the transition to Roy Jones didn't quite work, because whatever you wanted him to be, you can't rebuild from scratch ever. As Josh was finding out, maybe you can't rebuild from scratch. Like you say, it's impossible now. So here's what you got to work. You got to work what he has, but to give someone more knowledge is not a bad thing. I say this all the time, as long as you don't take away their strengths. And I used to criticise Eubank in the start of his career, because I covered most of it. That he just, if he sort of threw half the amount of punches he threw, he would be much more dynamic. And then when he stopped throwing as many punches, I criticised him for not throwing enough punches, because he waited too long. And I thought the whole Roy Jones thing, having that just waiting there, you haven't got Roy Jones' raw power, Roy Jones' natural judgment of distance and timing, that the great fighter had. He's good, but you haven't got that. Just because you're athletic doesn't mean you can mould you into everything you want to be. So yeah, I don't know what Beaumont's going to do for him at this stage of they been together now and who he is right now, Eubank. I don't know what he can do. But it's an experienced man in his corner. He's boxed at the highest level. He's trained fighters at the highest level, so that that composure in the corner will help, of course. And it might just be another name. I mean, the Eubanks, they're like, they always got to do something stupid, haven't they? Or non-stupid, but it deflects.
Different and
eccentric, I would say. But they deflect. Like having Beaumark is not a bad thing. If people would be totally zoning on him getting knocked up by Liam, they're going to be one after the press conference over. You've got all the YouTube lunatics like you lot. No, they're going to be asking him about. Half you want to go and speak to Beaumark about Terence Crawford. And then half the questions on the press conference itself are going to be, what's it like having Terence Crawford's trainer? Have you met Terence? Have you sparred with Terence? Have you trained with Terence? What's it like being around the best fighter on the planet? It might help deflect all the pressure about what the pressure's like on him. So those questions will be asked, but it won't be so intense, maybe. So it's maybe a good move. Early in his career, who was training him? We were told he was training himself. Richie Davis was there. He wasn't really doing much, and he helped him out in the corner, we were told. And then his biggest fight of his career, then against Billy Joe Saunders, the corner looked mayhem because Eubank Senior used to get in the ring, stand in the middle of the ring, and not say nothing to him, like telepathically giving him information on what he was doing. But it looked great. It was funny. It looked great. It was madness. But like,
again, it's always the show, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's a strong character. Like, to be honest, I don't think I needed much counselling in my corner. Because my amateur trainer wasn't a very nice man, wasn't very good at his job, I don't feel. I don't want to slag him off, but I am. But I mean, so you learn to think for yourself. Maybe Chris had the same sort of thing. You learn to think for yourself. So when I turned pro, the corner was really important, you do listen, but ultimately, I learned to think for myself. So half the time, I was thinking and not listening. Maybe that was a problem. But I mean, so I could have learned to think for myself. You have to, which just helps you. But maybe Chris doesn't need counselling in the corner. I think that's madness at a high level, but he's so used to probably taking his own counsel. Because look at the start of his career, what he had. Like Richie Davis, who's a real knowledgeable man, but he's all like, and he's been around the Eubanks all their lives, so he knows what he's allowed to do, what he's not allowed to do, and he just go, okay, well this is how they want it, so I'll do what they want. Makes them out because he loves them. But so he'd get no instruction. So he's used to it, like. It's just madness, really. You think about it. So, I don't think that's I don't think the corner thing is a real issue for him. But it's how he approaches the fight, and also, can you go back to that high output, high energy, aggressive fighter?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it's a while since we've seen that, and during that stage, this isn't a controversial statement. He's been getting older. Yeah. So can he still do it?
Yeah, and it's something that I think we've spoken about this in the past as well. I've not felt that Eubank has been the same fighter since he moved back down from 168, and I know he wasn't a natural super middleweight at all. He wasn't a massive middleweight. I'm sure now it's got later in his career, it's probably a little bit more difficult to make 160 than previously. But I felt like some of that robustness was lost when he boxed Marcus Morrison, Wanik Adawan. Yeah. Like, just didn't quite have that. And he's never really been a fighter who, even when he was at his kind of attritional best and the volume punching side of him in the earlier stages of his career, he still would like to take a rest. He still didn't fight 3 minutes of every round. No. And I feel like it's now got to the stage of his career where he's even less inclined to do that. And then you factor in the potential for him being hurt now, which we've seen. It's not a potential or a possibility now. That can happen, whether he believed it or not. We've seen it now. Maybe that version of him's not there, Barry.
But that was my whole point about I thought Smith would win the first fight, because everyone goes on about the great engine of Eubank, but he only throws when he wants to. But he used to throw 50 punches and he'd look phenomenal. But he'd do that 3 times in a fight, in a round. It looked great. But actually, then you take that away. That's 35 to 40 seconds of the round he's worked. Where Liam Smith is methodically, constantly on you.
And he has that ability, doesn't he, to just increase it when he needs to.
For
Liam
3
Smith.
minutes.
Yeah.
And also, he knows enough because he's been around boxing all his life. What a family to be around. To learn from. Even when you're not fighting, you're learning because you're watching your brothers do stuff and training. You're always learning, constantly, all the time. But like, to be busy when you're quiet, that's my time to take over. And that's my time to make use of the stuff for to cover your space. And he has the one style, Liam Smith. That sounds like a Liam Smith fanboy here. He has the one sort of set style, but he is adaptable. He showed that against Liam Williams in the second fight because he boxed. Because the first fight didn't work for him. He got it wrong, didn't he? And I know on purposes, really without the cut, even though the scorecards were close, for all the rest of us, it looked like Liam Williams was winning the fight. Clear enough to not, for it to be a controversial decision if he didn't get it. If it carried on in the same vein, of course, there was enough rounds for Liam Smith to turn it around before the cut, but it looked like he was getting it all wrong because he was trying to tough it out with him. But then in the second fight, he was still the toughest fight, but he boxed a lot better. He was a bit more patient, didn't overcommit, and showed an intelligence. For the first time, actually, for me, he showed an intelligence I didn't think he had. And again, so I thought either whichever way it goes, he'll make you work hard, but there's thought behind his work. We just think he's a guy who walks over with his hands up and swallows shots on the gloves and fires back. His head movement's better than what you think. It's not massively dramatic, but it's a little bit there. You twist it a little bit there like that. That just makes you either scuffs the shot or you miss. And again, when you miss shots, you don't want to throw the next one because you've already missed with it. And again, I knew that as soon as Eubank let a barrage of shots go, and he might have two or three phases in his attack, actually, Chris Eubank Jr. But Smith will cover and go again. Once you stop, he's going to throw. You'll think you got him hurt, you'll cover up tight enough, and you might whack his head back, and it might look good, you might feel it, but once you stop throwing, if you haven't moved your feet and gone away, he's going to jump right on you and throw back straight away. And that's why you can't allow him to close the gap on you, because you put yourself in the corner on the rope and show how clever you are to make him miss and draw him onto an uppercut, which is great, by the way. But if that doesn't work out like it never, you got no escape route because he's on you. So you got to take that centre of the ring straight away. Even if you can't push him back, you got to take the centre of the ring and work around. Otherwise, you're done. And I don't think tactically Eubank has that intelligence. He seems a more intelligent man because he talks better. But sports, and he might be a more intelligent man, I don't know. But intelligence in the ring and intelligence outside the ring. And I'm not saying Liam Smith's not intelligent, but it's a different thing. He can think. I think Smith can think much better in the ring than Eubank can. Eubank has dined out, and understand because he's been really good, but he's dined out on his gifts, on his abilities, which we all do.
Yeah, I get what you mean though. Yeah.
He hadn't had to think. There's very rarely he's had to think. A lot of the fights where he's had to dig deep, and he can do that. There's no worry about him wanting to quit, or worried if he takes a shot not to fire back. He'll give it. He'll stand. He
wanted to carry on in the first fight.
He of course, he was stuck all over the place. He still wanted to go. It was brilliant. The commentary was funny.
But that is a real positive that he can take. That's
commentary wasn't
the
positive.
The only positive he can take from the first fight, which is that what he would always have believed to be true about himself, but that he never actually had to prove up until that point, turned out to be true, which is that there's no quit in him because he wanted to keep going. His instinct was to keep fighting. And you can think that will be your instinct, but you won't know until you're in that fog, and it really only is instinct that's operating. So he will know that what he always felt he was, minerals-wise, that is what he is. And it's a really hard way to find it out, but even so, that's still a thing. I mean, you talk with a lot of pride about how you kept getting up against Freitas and how proud you are of that, because you didn't know until that point whether you would in that kind of circumstance or not, but you did.
Well, I was trying to get out the ring.
Barry, you mentioned there about obviously being around a fighting family. We were in Poland with Paul Smith last week, and he said, I'm sure you won't mind me kind of relaying this, he said at the end of the third round, when Eubank had kind of let go of the uppercuts and started to throw shots, he said, I didn't want to talk, it's not my place to speak in the corner. He said, but for the last 10 seconds, once Declan and Joe Mack have kind of had their bit, I'll maybe say something at the end. And he said, I'll paraphrase because he swore a lot. He said, at the end, like, he's knackered. Like, let him do that. Like, make him work. A few more of those. He's got 4 or 5 more of those in him, and then he's done. Just make him work. So if we do see Eubank kind of return to the more attritional version of him that we saw in the first stage of his career, I don't think Liam Smith is going to be too unhappy with that.
Oh, because I think he's going to gas out again.
And leave opportunities as well.
But... yeah, I don't know if... yeah, again, he'll make you continuously work. That's the thing. Like, once you stop working, Liam Smith will work. I repeat myself, which I'd like to do, obviously. But once you stop working, he's going to work. So he'll be confident to be strong enough to take your shots or cover and block and try and slip a few and fire off it. But ultimately, he's waiting for you to just slow down. As soon as you stop throwing punches, he's going to throw in that round straight away. So I think it's a hard fight for Eubank. It's not an unwinnable fight for him. Like, I wouldn't have been shocked in the first fight if Eubank would have won, because he could build up a quick lead. He can. So there's early rounds, he could go whipping shots, but you got to use the legs more without running. So he has to hold his feet for combinations, move straight after he throws the shots, because punch is going to come back his way, guaranteed, but never run. Because if you're running, you're putting yourself close to the ropes, and Liam Smith will follow you, and he'll cut the ring off, and he'll put you under pressure. That's exactly what's going to happen. So you got to say that you got to start in the centre of the ring, and move round in that semicircle, and maybe a circle now and again. To just give the circle gives you the rest, and then the semicircles is when you punch him and move and punch and move, and do it that way. So it's very important. I just don't know whether tactically he will have that in him. Bo Mac might help with that. But can you listen and trust the guy? Because ultimately, whatever happens in a fight, when things are getting hard, you just revert back to what you know, and trust in a trainer who you don't know. Telling you this is what I say this all the time, don't I? The trainers sometimes will tell you stuff you don't want to do in a hard fight, but that gets you over the line. They believe. But if you don't trust that trainer because you don't know him or you haven't got that bond, then he might believe it, but you don't believe it, so you're not going to do it. Because whatever he's telling you, you haven't got to fucking do it. You got to do it. So he's saying, you got this, you got to go at him. Well, you go at him, and then I'll follow you. But then if you have a trust to your trainer, you know he wants the best for you, then that's why the dad and son things is all the issue about things like that. But guess what I'm going to mention now? Joe Kazaki. No, but any father in a corner with this, if your father's telling you that, mostly, they say the nicer relationships with father and son trainers, then that's your dad telling you that. So even though it's hard, he believes, and if he believes, you believe. But how can you have that bond with a trainer you've known for 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or a year even? He's not. That bond of trust takes a longer time than just a bond of respect.
And the game plan that you've kind of mentioned there, it's not something that we've seen Eubank do either, really, in his career.
No.
Holding his feet to throw the combinations, get off and then moving away. And then that, at this stage of his career, because that is changing his style.
He's a busy pressure fighter.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he can push Liam Smith back continuously. He can push back with punches at some when he lets his punches go. He might hit him back on his heels. But I think Liam Smith sits down too low, so he gets that anchored in his work. So it's going to be hard to push him back, and especially with those fast flurries, because there's snap on the shots, but there's not a lot of weight on some of those punches. Like Eubank's one of those enigmas where when he lets his punches go, you almost go, oh, the guy's still there. So I mean, I think he can knock you out, but I mean, he looks like he's a devastating. Early in his career, he looked like he was a devastating. If he hit you, he's knocking walls through. But then you think, but they're still there though. So it's almost like he don't hit as hard, but he's sharp and snappy with the shots. But I think they lack a bit of push through. You don't really turn into it maybe. And when you throw fast combinations, you can't quite turn into the shot because you can't get that movement. You can possibly get that movement of your hips and your shoulders. If you're throwing speed, they become, in the words of the great Jim Watt, arm punches.
Arm punches.
He's a good commentator, Jim Watt.
He got
loads of criticism at the end of his career, and it was all bollocks. He was probably the best one we've had for a long time.
Yeah, big up Jim Watt every time.
Much better than me.
I like you, Barry.
No, I don't fuck.
No,
sorry, it's just true.
Andy, we've naturally started this, as we often do, talking about what the loser needs to do. For Liam Smith going into this fight, I mean, I went to the gym with Liam. I didn't do anything in the gym, obviously. I went to the gym a couple of weeks before the first fight, and then about a week ago as well. So about the same sort of distance between. And for me, there wasn't a lot of difference in kind of the person that you encountered, in the sense of he was very confident before the first fight. He's now even more so naturally. How important is it that he doesn't go in there and think, oh, well, I'll eventually get to him and I'll eventually touch him and it'll eventually go?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important, but I don't feel like somebody like him, with his experience level and the professionalism and just the outlook that he has, will go in there with any preconceived idea about what's going to happen. He'll have thought about it, but he knows that the discipline of boxing is that you go in there and it's a new fight, it's a new day, it's the same opponent, but there's no guarantee that they'll go about it the same way, and that you'll need to adapt to what is in front of you. And I don't think he'll have any problem with that, to be honest with you. I think he'll love the fact that everybody's talking about what does Eubank need to do differently. You look at the rematch between Usyk and Joshua, and we talked endlessly, everybody did, about what did Joshua need to do differently, because he lost, obviously, and he has to do something different. Whereas with Usyk, no one's really talking about him, because we were always just confident that he's one of these guys where whatever the other person does, he'll find a way. But crucially for Liam, he knows now. And he always would have suspected it, that he could hurt him, but he knows now that he can. But it's not really the fact that he knows. Eubank knows. That's the crucial thing, and it does make it different. I mean, it does make it very, very different. And he's been playing on that in the build-up. You know, I saw a clip from The Gloves Are Off, which I haven't watched yet, but I think Johnny Nelson says to him, "Did you see fear in him or smell fear in him in that first fight?" And he just gives him a long look and says yes. Now, whether he did or he didn't doesn't matter, because given what happened, he can say that to Eubank, and Eubank can't say, "Well, no, there was no fear in me," because he can just say, "Well, look what happened."
Yeah. It's something that he said that Andy Pereira spoke to Liam Smith the day after the first fight, and that's one of the things that he said. He said he was terrified. He said he was terrified of being hit. He was pulling up high, chin out of the way, and he said he was terrified of being hit. Same question to you, Barry, as I've just asked to Andy. How does, if at all, Liam Smith's mentality or approach to this fight change after the first fight?
I think it helps if... I remember the first fight, I was with Liam Smith, actually, and in the Sky, and I was saying about... And someone asked the question, Andy Scott maybe, well, he asked me, "Do you think Eubank can get under Liam's skin?" And he sat right next to me. I said, "Yeah, 100% he will." Liam's going, "No, he won't. He won't get into my skin." I said, "He will get into your skin. He will irritate you every second. But I don't think it'll affect you. I think it'll help you. Because I think he's one of those guys who he doesn't have to fight angry, but it helps him.
Yeah.
Him being angry doesn't make him lose his shape. I think him being angry helps him...
Makes him colder, if anything.
Yeah. Because he'll do his job regardless. He'll do his job for him. He knows how to box. He's been boxing all his life. He knows how to job. He can compartmentalise friendship and sport and what it is, and just go about and do it. And if he batters you, and it don't matter. And he can hug and kiss you after. It'll be no problem for him at all. He won't care, and he won't care if you don't want to shake his hand. I don't think it bothers him, right, to be honest. But I think it helps him if he doesn't like you, because he can do his job then with a bit more spite and enjoyment for him. I think he's a nasty man, Liam Smith. I think he's a fair. I think in general, what I feel about him, and I don't know him, but what I feel about him and being in his company, that he's a guy who's okay. He's a nice enough bloke, who's not over nice. He's not over familiar, but I think he could turn like that, and not give a shit about you, and I think that helps him, and that helps him when he fights. So Eubank now, dragging out this elbow thing. I've seen a clip of that, and they were talking about the elbow on the gloves are off, and he's smiling, Liam Smith, but that'll bother him, and that's a good thing for him. So usually Eubank getting under your skin is part of his arsenal. Could it get you out of your shape, or you see, or whatever, or you panic, or no, you've seen a weakness, or whatever it is. He annoys you, and it might just take your focus away. But for Liam Smith, it won't. It'll help him, and it did in the first fight. So the Eubank's best thing Eubank could do is say nothing, really.
Yeah, it's one of the things that the Smith brothers have said over the years, haven't they? They've all said that when they were growing up, Liam was the one who was fighting in the streets. He was the one who was, out of all of them, who always loved to fight. Yeah,
he was actually the one who was least bothered about boxing.
Yeah.
You know, it took him a while to get to the gym. I think Callum started before he did. And in the end, he went. But like you say, it was the mentality is... It's an old school prize fighter's mentality. It's not personal. But he doesn't mind making it personal if that's where you want to take it. And Barry's right, this week, whereas the fight week last time, you know, he's got Eubank digging away, and you could see that every time Eubank opened his mouth, it annoyed Liam Smith. Like, never to the point where you felt it would actually impact on his performance, because we know too much about him to think that. But you could see that he found Eubank intensely irritating. But this fight week will be incredibly straightforward, because every time Eubank says anything, you can just say, well, what happened in January? That's all he has to do. I mean, Eubank, it'll be interesting to see how he plays it. And I guess he just has to stick with what he stuck with so far, which was, he's a freak occurrence, blah, blah. But
cheated, and he's pretty practically
exactly,
with the elbow and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. But, we do talk about this a lot. And I watched the first fight back not that long ago, actually. And at the end, he wandered over when Andy was talking to Liam Smith and kind of gate crashed the interview, and did just say, kind of put out his hand and said, the better man won on the night, everything that happened in the build-up, no hard feelings, I've got great respect for you and your family. And as we often say, people in the very immediate aftermath generally do that, and then when they sit down in the dressing room, start to think about it, they just think, no, that's not going to work. And then it becomes an elbow and a combination from the gods and all the rest of it. And he's got to stick with that. There's nothing else he can say this week, is there, really?
No, not really. And that's kind of where I was going with certainly on the Liam Smith side of things, is before the first fight, Chris Eubank was a favourite. I know he picked Liam Smith to win, as did others as well. But I think nobody that I saw certainly picked as an emphatic fashion. But not having that this time and going on the back of such a emphatic performance, not having something to work against. But I guess now he has latched onto it in a sense of Eubank saying, it was this, it was that, and that's just enough to build, because Liam Smith does have that, and all of the Smith brothers, to be fair, when they get together, it is very much that siege mentality. It's us against them, and that can work for you, can't it?
And also, we have a chip in his shoulder, Liam Smith, because
everybody's everyone's talking about the weight, everyone's talking about the elbow, and everyone's talking about this, and he wants to.
And also, it's still the Chris Eubank show. Because it's always going to be the Chris Eubank show as long as he boxes, because of who he is. Because he's the bigger commodity. That's just how it is. He's not the better fighter, clearly. That's been shown. But he's still the A side, because he's the guy. He's the name. He's the one going to push his pay-per-view, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, but his name's pushing the pay-per-view. It's an intriguing fight, and I hope
people are buying it. Sorry to interrupt. The casual sports fan are buying it because Eubank's son got knocked out and he's fighting again. Yeah, let's see if he can do it this time. But
for pay-per-view, it's only the casual vote that counts most of the time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, completely. Yeah.
Well, for example, this week I think it's someone was telling me that Eubank's been on the overlap with Gary Neville. That's a big platform, and they didn't ask Liam Smith to go on.
No,
they want Eubank on because he's Eubank Jr, and that's just what he's always had his whole career. But I think the thing that will really appeal to Liam in this second fight is the fact that he could finish him. If I beat him again, I can finish his career.
Yeah, he's the
and
type
I can
of
be
really
the man to be able to say I ended you as a boxer. And after I'm done with you, you can keep going if you want, and be a name for other people to get on their record. But that's what's waiting for you when I'm done with you.
I don't know,
and he'll love the idea of that.
I don't know how long that name. He's been a good fighter, Chris Eubank Jr. Let's be honest. He's fallen short at the highest level, but he's been a good fighter. But how long can that name keep giving you big paydays for?
On the back of 2 knockout losses, not very long would be my estimation.
You would think so, wouldn't you? But
But the motivation for Eubank, and that's what I like about it so much, is I don't feel like Liam Smith will take his eye off the ball. I think being able to claim that kind of scalp of basically saying, I drove this guy out of the sport, he's a con man and I got rid of him. I think he'd love that. But Eubank, the challenge of coming back from it and being able to say, every dog does have his day. It happened to me. I thought it couldn't, but it did. But look what I did in reply. That's what we've got.
Yeah, we could.
It's a good fight, actually. Isn't it?
It is a really good fight, and I think there is almost, certainly for me, because I one of my less accurate predictions, I expected a pretty boring first fight. I thought Eubank would probably be a little bit too big and kind of keep the fight. Be the more recent Eubank that we've seen, where he kind of does go through the motions a little bit, and Liam would maybe have some success, but not enough to hurt him, which obviously wasn't the case on the night. But now there are so many variables.
I probably said that Eubank was marking time before he went on to become a multiple weight
undisputed champion. There's no way that Andy Clarke picked against him. Absolutely no chance.
I would have sat on the fence, I'm sure.
Tell you what's a good fight stylistically?
What?
Do we get beat? Eubank versus Charlo.
Jamal Charlo.
Either one, but the middleweight. So
Jamal. Yeah,
it's a really good fight. I mean, he gets
They were trying to do that. They were trying to do that.
Stylistically, that's a really
Eubank went and boxed. He boxed Matt Korobov, didn't he, on the same night as Joshua Ruiz too.
Early unsatisfactory finish, but he was linking up with PBC at that point.
Yeah, and that was the plan because and then he boxed De Gale. That was a PBC card.
Yeah,
the De Gale fight. So they were trying to do that fight, weren't they? God, the Matt Korobov fight for a round and a half. He was like Matt Korobov was obviously really good amateur, amazing amateur in his day. But yeah, that was a round and a half where he was pinging Eubank really, and then the shoulder went. Was it the shoulder? There was some sort of injury, wasn't it? And then the fight was.
I also had a knee in my mind.
I think it was Korobov. I think it was a shoulder. I think but yeah, no, I mean it could be a good fight. I mean I don't know what Jamal Charlo's doing at the minute. I'm fighting Caleb Plant backstage in Vegas, and and what have you.
I just missed that.
Did you?
I seen all the people outside. He was on the phone. He was shouting at somebody. I don't know who it was, like swearing, really, really aggressive, like threatening. He was, but I go, what's all that about? And I'm not a fan of them personally. I've had dealings with them once. They asked me to Canelo Golovkin. They were both there, the twins together, and I had a tie on because I was working for BT at the time. I had a suit and tie on. They thought I worked in the arena, and they gone, "Where's the toilet? Where's the bathroom?" Whatever he said to me. I went, "I don't know." "Why don't you know?" I said, "I don't work here." "But you got a tie on." I went, "Oh, fuck off." The way they spoke to me, it was horrible. I don't know which one it was.
Oh yeah, he had a bad night, didn't he? Because then there was the footage of him kind of like just shouldering past the security guard, and it's funny. I was talking to a few. I think I said it on the pod at the time, but it might have been well, it was the conversation I had with Macklin where he sent me the clip of him getting slapped, and my reaction was, God, that's not a great look for Caleb Plant doing that backstage, and he just said, no, it's the other way around. Yeah. Like the fact that he didn't do anything about it is terrible. And that's a fighter's mentality, and I'm not one. So my reaction was, that was a bit out of order.
He didn't even pretend, because that didn't hurt him, and it
just hurt his ego, his pride.
No, but he shit himself. For that little second.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what everybody's saying.
Let it like said. He might have gone at him, but he shit. That the initial reaction he got hit, he shit himself.
Yeah,
and then what happens? He might have battered.
That kind of thing's really interesting, isn't it, though? Because I remember at the weigh-in for, I'm going off topic here, but I remember at the weigh-in for AJ Hellenius. I was talking to Tony afterwards, Tony Bailey, for quite a while, and.
Proper name drop, and
he was. These are people we all know. And during the weigh-in, because he was covering the weigh-in for DAZN with David Hay, and somebody threw out the idea, alive to the kind of arena. Well, I've heard rumours that these two might be getting it on for a third fight. And when we were chatting afterwards, like Tony was saying. He was saying, and for example, that fighting instinct says, I love fighting, and that'll never leave me. For example. When that got suggested, immediately I'm looking at Hay, and if there's any kind of reaction from him in his eyes in anything, then anything can happen. And he said, and I know he's the same. And that's the kind of mentality that, as far as I can understand it, that they all have, that you all have. And fighters looked at Charlo and what he didn't do and feel like, that's quite telling. That in that moment, I mean, Fury got a lot of grief that one time, didn't he? When I can't remember exactly what happened, but he was standing behind a railing and something happened to one of the people he was with, or somebody had a pop at them.
Billy Joe Saunders' dad.
Yeah, that was it. And he didn't
jump in.
He didn't jump in, and people looked at it and just thought, okay, you should have done something there. But it's, I don't know. It's this instinct, it's mentality, none of which I have. But the expectation from all fighters I've spoken to was that Charlo should have just. All bets are off at that point. It doesn't matter where you are or what the situation is or what the consequences might be. That how he reacted is not what you should do.
Caleb Plant loves it, doesn't he? He absolutely loves it. He had the one with Benavidez in the City Gym in Vegas where he slaps one of the Benavidez. I think he slapped Jose, I think it was, and then David Benavidez is there. And then he obviously had the Canelo one when they were face to face, and now he's had the Charlo. He loves it. He absolutely loves it, Caleb Plant. But anyway, not sure how we. That was also like just kind of finish off the amble that we've been on here. That was and then about 10 minutes later, Jamal Charlo's ex-wife and Jamal Charlo's wife were having a fight in the car park, weren't they?
I didn't see that, but I didn't see it live. I saw that on
Barry in the background filming on his phone.
I'm just walking on, little fella, like under people's armpits going...
Yeah, just whispering at people.
Caleb, Jamal said this.
Guess what he just said about you.
Anyway, back to the fight. So Liam Smith buoyed by the first fight and stopping Chris Eubank Jr. Look, I don't think... I mean, I'm sure Liam Smith will be the only person who knows the answer to this, whether or not he actually felt that he had the capability to take him out early. He always said throughout that he had the potential to hurt him with a headshot. There was all the rumours beforehand about hurting him with a body shot in the gym. Do you think he approaches the fight any different to the first fight?
No. Exactly the same. Walk him down, put pressure on him, stay tight early, because that's when he's going to be his freshest. You just make him work. Make him work. Any gaps, and he leaves gaps because he throws wild and fast. Pop him straight away. And once, it'll be the same. Tight. Just it'd be like he always fights. He fights a pretty similar style, even if he can adapt a little bit. But it's usually plans the same. Get that centre in as quick as you can. He can move box on the move a little bit. Smith, we haven't really seen it very often, but he can do it. But he'll be that high guard, elbows tucked inside, everything neat. Because you keep your shape and your structure. I mean, Eubank loses his, even though you might have faster hands than you got better timing, and Eubank's speed. Like people say, timing always beats speed, and it doesn't. Good timing beats blind speed. Like you see now with Amir Khan. Amir Khan had business fast hands, but a lot of his punches but lacked the thought. He just knew he had fast hands, so he knew he could throw 6 and hit you with 3, and that was good enough. But they weren't always super accurate with it. But he would just come forward with the shots. So once he threw a punch, he'd come forward with them. And Eubank's a little bit like that. Don't think he has massive, like, exact thought of what's going to happen with that combination. Just, I'll throw it. But I'm so fast and explosive that it'll be enough to worry you. And Liam, keeping his shape and his structure, will stay nice and tight. And once he sees the gap, because Liam has a good, tough. He has a good concentration level where he can, as you've already said, he can think under pressure. So he'll see the gap, he'll wait for the gap and not worry about, be confident that he slipped or blocked the shot that's coming his way. That's hard to do, that takes a real belief in yourself to do that. Whether you can take a shot or not, to think in the fire. No, the great fighters do it supremely well. Like Duran with slip punches going forward and think about his movements in the danger of getting knocked out. That's like phenomenal. I'm not saying Lewis is a great fighter, but he's a very, very good fighter. And he could do that. So yeah, I struggle to see if Eubank needs to get a fast lead and keep him long and keep it and have the best engine he's had for many, many years. And and the uppercuts are important, and following through with the left hooks, because you want to, if you made the effort to hit his head up, making for that second shot for a split second, he can't see where the shot's coming from. So once it's up, you got to go whip it across straight away. And also hoping Liam's skin's not the best, by the way. So that might help you, all those things like that. But do damage on him early. If it's just physical damage or mental damage, you got to bring lots of punches on him as early as you can. And and hope that way. But I just can't, like the first fight, I just can't see how Liam Smith doesn't just keep him under pressure.
Andy, before we move on and talk about the undercard, good card this weekend in Manchester, might I add. Where does the winner and loser go in this fight? And or loser?
I think a loss for either one of them is... If Eubank loses, then I think he is pretty much done, to be honest with you. Because the amount of money that he would be able to command will come down considerably, and that will matter to him. It'll be interesting to see whether he would have the motivation and desire to really try and rebuild, given the age he is and given the fact that he would no longer be the attraction that he has previously been. I do think he would find it really, really hard, though, if he were to leave the sport not having done what he wanted to and kind of what he said he was going to. I think that could really linger and be difficult for him, as you head towards retirement. So he absolutely must win. I think that's the simple equation for him. If Liam Smith loses, I mean, maybe we'll see a third fight if Liam Smith loses, and it's a good fight. For the winner, they've got to be looking at a world title fight, haven't they, really, at middleweight of some description? Because it is quite open, isn't it? It is quite open since Golovkin gave up those 2 belts. Eubank's always talked about wanting to become a world champion, and if he were to win the fight, I hope he remains true to that ambition. But he's never really seemed that bothered about it. But for both of them, they're not getting any younger. They're in their 30s, and you just want the biggest fight you could possibly get for as much money as you can get it for, don't you? I mean, that's kind of what you always want. But Liam's won a world title. Yeah, I'm sure he'd love to win another one at middleweight, but really, you just want to make as much hay as you can before you decide that it's time to hang him up.
That's one of the things he said to me. He said if he wins the fight, he wants the biggest fight available. He doesn't want any tune up. He's out of contract after this fight. This is his last fight.
He can go wherever he wants.
But he's not going anywhere to say, we'll give you an 8-rounder or a 10-rounder to tick over, and then we'll get you a big one. He's not interested in that.
He comes on the back of beating another big name, so even though that shouldn't have any relevance on
back-to-back stoppage wins as a pay-per-view headliner.
Yeah. But there shouldn't have any relevance if you moving up rankings, of course. But in this, it will now being a big name, so because it makes him a draw at other places, maybe the other side of the pond. So, but I think if Liam Smith loses, he retires. What else is he gonna do? Like he's had an Indian summer. He won a world title. He had a Canelo big money fight. He's had 2 massive money fights now. He's ticked every box. He's happy. He's gutted. He's lost, except for the 3rd fight. That would be the only thing.
Yeah.
The only fight would be possibly the.
Do you know what the terms of this are? I don't. I'll find out this week.
No.
In terms of whether
he won't have any. I doubt he has any. Massive pull on it, Liam Smith.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be anything in the contract that's
over Eubank Central. But if Eubank loses, I think he packs in, but he might come back. Because the thing with Eubank,
come back. I think he'd find it really, really difficult to go out off the back of this.
Because he'll go on. He'll do he'll do a jungle program or one of those reality TV shows and get his name back into the wider public again.
Box Conor Ben,
and then maybe come back and box Conor Ben. Yeah.
Oh that's always there for him, isn't it? I've forgotten about that.
They both box each other on an island somewhere in Mauritius. Nice place to go, Mauritius.
That'd be a good place to watch boxing.
Yeah, it's nice. I've been there. It's nice. Oh. Yeah. But so I think he'll pack it in and come back. I do, because then he'll just, because for him now, I think it'll just be about, he's in plenty of money, but when you get to his level of fame and stardom, and probably the way he lives his life, I'm just presuming, because he's been rich for a long time, that it's never enough money, is it? So you can do reality TV because of his name and who he is, and he'll do really well because he's really an engaging character. And then he'll come back and fight, because then you give yourself a big platform to go back and fight again and get the big money that he wouldn't have got straight after 2 defeats on a trot.
Sort of like a comeback fight, but instead of a comeback fight, you're on TV in front of 10 million
people. But it will, though, because
do you want to come back for an 8-rounder, or do you want to go on here and get paid loads of money?
Did Hay did the jungle, then came back, did he? And then sold out the O2 twice against nobodies.
Amir Khan as well.
Yeah,
come back after Brooke. He did the jungle.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if he did. He did that. So it puts him back in that conscious of the public. And then he so it's, you can't blame him. Good luck to him. But I think ultimately a loss for either one, and their sort of careers are sort of done, which is not bad because they're both at the end of their careers anyway. Like there's no. If you have to lose him, which you're gutted about, Liam Smith's had a fantastic career.
Yeah, he really has.
Eubank's had a really good career, by the way. He's boxed a lot of good people. They've got his credit, and he's lost and come back and not cried about it. Let's not forget that. He's not this spoiled kid who when he lost and felt sorry for himself and disappeared. He comes back and fights and gets back on the horse. This is a different proposition, though, because he got stopped. And
at that age as well, that's a factor, isn't it? If you think about people who got stopped, and at the time you thought, wow, I wonder if they can come back from this. Like Amir did it after Brady's Prescott, but he was young, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Macklin, Jamie Moore, he was young, Matt. Think of George against Carl Frotch, he was young George, and they all went on to do their best stuff afterwards. Because maybe when you're young and you're hungry and you're kind of a bit more fearless and maybe you're not married and you don't have kids and all that kind of, all the things that can civilise you, it's maybe a bit easier to shake it off and not really be affected by it, because there's something massively impressive about someone who gets iced, for want of a better phrase, and they're still the same afterwards.
It's the need, though, isn't it? It's the, like for a lot of people, it's I didn't make the money, they keep going, or I haven't won a world title yet.
Yeah.
But I don't think Eubank's ever had that. I don't know, but it's never really seemed a world title because.
You'd imagine that he would have been able to box for a world title at numerous points of his career.
Yeah. So that doesn't seem to be like the top of his priority. So that ambition of that, he'd like to have it, but that ambition might not ever be there because he's a big name.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, he's always going to be talked about in boxing history over the years because of who he is, because of who he is and where he's been.
That could be kind of be a plus, can't it? So if it's not money that drives you and it's not titles that drive you and it's really your own personal pride and ego that drives you, then if that's still there, then you're still going to want it.
No, but I think because of the age factor and all that, sometimes you keep going because like Liam Smith would, if he didn't win a world title, he might want to keep going thinking about I'm still good enough, I'm still good enough, I'm still good enough, and you could go longer than you should, but you don't have to know. And with Eubank Jr, he haven't got that ambition. I don't think that burning ambition to want to do it. He might like to do it. So again, what's he in for? He's in loads of money.
It's just ego then, isn't it? But that can be a real powerful tool.
Yeah, but also also the biggest danger.
Yeah, agreed.
The biggest danger for everyone in a hurt business is that ego keeping you going, that pride keeping you going, as in a fight, of course. And we talk about people quitting, but the other way, so the pride and ego and not wanting to go down, go on your back rather than get stopped or quit, and that drives you to greatness, but it can also put you in a hospital. So it's a fine line. But either way, I don't know what we're talking about. I think either loss, and I don't think we see. Unless the third fight, but I don't see that happening. If Smith wins, we don't see him again. The great key goes off and sails off the sunset with plenty of cash.
Smith wins. If he wins,
if he loses, you don't see him again. He's in plenty of cash. He's been a world champion. He's boxed on huge stages. He's boxed a superstar of his generation, really. Yeah. Including Floyd Mayweather, could really just before him, and again Canelo. You know what I mean? And did okay. No, really, he got beat. He did himself proud, didn't he? Say that much. And then he's won a world title. He's won on big stages, pay-per-views, and Eubanks and stories. And it's just great for him. Like he go away happily. Unbelievable. Like so, it's been great for him. He never dreamt his career would be this good. And Eubank, if he gets beat, he'll go. I think he'll go away, and if he can regroup his name, his popularity in the wider public, he might come back again there to maximise his profile. But apart from that, we might not see either one again.
Okay, let's have a little whip through the undercard before we wrap things up today. There are a few decent fights, that we do have to have a look at. Starting off with Mark Heffron versus Jack Cullen for the British super middleweight title. Really good fight I'm very much looking forward to. Mark Heffron in a very good vein of form. Jack Cullen, you know what you're going to get from him. He's going to come. He's going to bring X amount of thousands of people from Little Lever.
Heffron's a big ticket seller too.
That's good. They've got real good potential, that fight, to be a really, really good fight. Two guys who like to come and throw their shots. Heffron, I think, the bigger puncher, but Jack Cullen, busy and loves a tear up.
And bigger. I know Cullen's really tall, but I think Heffron's just bigger in general. I think it's a hard fight for Cullen. I think he'll do well early and he'll fire back, but I think the fact that he's willing to fire back will get him into trouble. I think he'll get caught throwing. That's what'll happen. As he's throwing, I think he'll take a big right hand off Heffron, or left hook. I think it'll be a right hand actually over the top of his jab. I think he stops him. But up until that fight, I think it'll be a good fight. I think he'll start fast because Heffron will want to go out and make a statement. He'll start really fast. He likes to get involved in awards, doesn't he? And So, but I think they're both trying to use their jab. I think Heffron's got a good jab, but it's stronger than Cullen's. But Cullen's will be busier, I think, initially. But in the end, I think once he gets caught, you'll try and fire back, rather than looks to try and be safe, and then Heffron will just reign over him. To be honest, in the end, that's how I see it. Good fight, though. You're right. It's a good fight.
Good fight and a good time for Mark Heffron. He had those two fights with Denzel Bentley, obviously a draw and a loss. Kind of the eye injury and the eye went. But he's rebounded well against Lennox Clarke. Had that very impressive performance. Looks to be in good form. And as Barry says there, I expect Jack Cullen to make for his end of a good fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could have stuck this top of a smaller card, given their ticket selling power, the pair of them. It's a great fight for Lancashire, basically, because you've got Oldham up against Little Lever. I don't know exactly where Little Lever is, but I know that geographically
right next to a Cleaver, I've heard.
Yeah, it's not too far away. And they're old gym mates. They both used to be with the Jennings. Heffron's now with Joe Gallagher, who he admits now, he was with him earlier in his career and admits now he never should have left. That was the biggest mistake of his career. And he's had an interesting career because early on, again, he admits now he didn't buckle down to it. He didn't take it as seriously as he should have. I think after 6 years as a pro, he'd had 12, 13 fights, won them all, but hadn't really boxed anyone. He wasn't really kind of going anywhere. But I both think they both feel like this is a really, obviously Heffron's champion and he feels like it's a winnable fight, but for Cullen, he really feels like this is his opportunity, that he's boxed for titles before, a European against Sadjo, and he's been in high profile fights for Jaco, but this is his chance to really win some titles and cement, I won't say legacy necessarily, but you want to win stuff. And he's been an English champion, but he feels that he's good enough to be a British champion, which is just a hell of a thing to be able to say. And that this is his opportunity. And he feels like Heffron is very much an on-top fighter, very much a kind of a bully. He's called him that in a couple of interviews I've seen, and that after 3 rounds, that's when he'll take over and that he'll start to punish him. He feels that mentally, he feels, these are not popular things to say these days, but he feels that mentally he's quite weak. That's what Cullen said. He said it in quite a matter-of-fact way, so it'll be interesting to see what they say to each other, because they claim to get on well and it to be nothing personal. I think it might get quite personal at times this week, and if it does, I think it'll be started by Cullen. But yeah, he's gone back to Joe and he's moved up to super middleweight, and that was a good performance against Lennox Clarke. They weren't happy with the stoppage, but he'd been in trouble a few times, and he wasn't really throwing back. But it's just it's a local derby. It's on a big card. They're both big ticket sellers. They've got a backstory. I think we'll get a bit of spice this week. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, both action fighters as well. Neither one of them will be going in there and leaving anything to chance. Moving on, Adam Azim returns. Feels like a little while since we've seen Adam Azim. Obviously, he had the injury. We were kind of used to seeing him blowing people away in every few rounds, and then he had the 10 rounder with Santos Reyes.
Yeah,
Santos Reyes, and we've not seen him since. But an opportunity for Adam Azim to remind everybody, Andy, what all the fuss is about.
Yeah, and there was, the 10 rounds was a good thing. Yeah, I think Shane, has a big say in his opponents, and their history with matchmaking is impressive, isn't it? They do it well, they get it right. I had a look at Fanyan last week. He's got a good record, but he hasn't really boxed anyone particularly. But it's a good fight for him. I feel like it's a decent fight for him. He's tall, but he doesn't really box his height. He tends to lean in a bit when he jabs and brings it back a bit low, and I think that could be a bit of a problem for him if he does that against Azim. And he might not do that against Azim because
you won't have to get the chance.
Well, he'll need. But it's just that was the first thing. I mean, I don't watch loads and loads of footage of fighters if I haven't seen them before.
Sky's Andy Clarke. Is this really bad matchmaking? Sky's Andy Clarke.
I don't watch loads and loads. If there've been like major incidents and stuff and stoppages and things like that, I watch all of that. But I think you can get a good sense of what somebody is about by watching, a decent number of rounds. And if they've been in a real kind of crisis situation, you want to see that. But if you just pick out a kind of run-of-the-mill, if you want to get a sense of how they do it and what they might revert to, like Barry says, in any given situation, I think it's always quite useful just to watch a kind of a middle-of-the-road, nothing special sort of performance from them. And that was just one thing I noticed, was that, yeah, he's tall, but he leans in a little bit and can bring that left hand back slightly low, which might not be the greatest thing against Azim. But, he's been out for a bit, and it's just good to see him. It's just good to see him back.
Yeah, been out for a bit, Barry, but of course, up until that point, had done everything that was asked of him, including going 10 rounds and ticking that box in his last bout. But yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for Adam Azim to kind of remind everybody what he's all about. It makes it sound like he's been out for years, but of course he hasn't. He's just at the start of his career, and he was boxing so frequently. I think it's good to see him back.
Yeah, and it's important that he does box frequently. Yeah. And they continue in that vein. The issue is you run out of opponents, don't you? And that's the problem. But yeah, but I haven't seen the guys boxing yet. I'm not working on it. I do like to have a look who they're fighting, but it's closer to the time. But if Andy's saying is true, which I trust Andy's judgment, then yes, it's going to be a painful night for him.
How quickly do you think they can move Adam Azim? Because 140, who's got the European title at the minute? It's moved again, hasn't it? So Enoch Paulson had it.
Yeah, that's right. Weren't they going to rematch?
The guy's name. He's got a funny name. I'll Google it in a minute. But it seems like he's kind of trying to go not the traditional routes. Obviously, I think he was too young to box for a British anyway last year when he was kind of going through the levels. But it seems as though they are looking to move him quite quickly. And
it's what weight do you stay at though?
That's I think he'll stay at 140 for a little bit. There was some talk. I mean, I think it's kind of diminished now about him boxing for titles at lightweight. Once upon a time, obviously he's now at 140 and sort of growing. He's only going to go one way, isn't he? But how quickly do you think they can move him? Because look, 140 pounds, it's potentially a new hot division. It's sandwiched right between the two hottest divisions, certainly of the lower weight classes. And we're now starting to see the 135s move up. You've got Teofimo Lopez there, kind of the post Josh Taylor era at 140 now seems to be upon us. Course,
I think it's there's no huge rush to get him there, but I have been saying to him before the little bit of a break and before he went the distance, I was just got to be organic with him. Like, I know when you step up a level, just maybe jump go to the next one. Because there's loads of levels to it, by the way, moving a prospect. You're not going to go, you beat a journeyman, then you beat a guy with a winning record, then you box for your area title, then 3 fights later you box for a world title. That's not the level. I mean, you step up and give him a different prospect. Give him a southpaw, give him a guy who can take a punch, give him a guy who can't take a punch but who can punch himself. Then give him a guy who can do both, but it's only at a certain level. I think it's important for him to get all the right grounding before he makes a big step up. But so I would get this fight out of the way. He looks by the sounds of it, and I hope for him he gets a real quick, impressive finish. Get another one really quick, and then put him in with a guy who's past his sell by date, but have had a couple of good wins. I don't know who that would be. I'm not a matchmaker.
I feel like there's quite a few now at 140 who are kind of
not world level, just right below it.
Yeah, but on the sort of one fight that I really like is Richardson Hitchens versus Jose Zepeda. I've got that coming up, and I quite like that. Hitchens is a sort of well thought of 140 pound.
Anthony Yiggett.
Yeah, someone like that.
It's a real test.
Someone like that's good. I think Yiggett will probably appreciate not having to make 135 now at this stage of his career. I know he sort of flirted with 140.
He's still hitchhiking from a hospital in Poland.
Yeah, that wasn't good. You never liked it. It reminded me of Tyler Goodjohn said something very similar.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I've had it. So I got the cauliflower here. They go, no, we can't drain. They have to go to the hospital. And like in Reading, like 2 o'clock in the morning, I drove back to Cardiff. Like, it's just like, they don't care. I mean, they don't care. They want to get home, don't they? They've done their job, and they want to stay there for another 4 hours looking after you. But it's still, for him, away from home, it's horrific, isn't it? No one sees the aftermath, and people only see what happens to the big name fighters. But if someone like a Yiggett, not right now, but maybe in like the end of the year or something, it would be a really hard, real big test for him.
Frank Petitjean.
Miguel Vasquez.
Yes, that's it. Are they rematching or have they already rematched?
No, they're rematched. They're due to box just on the EBU website now. So yeah, he just beat Samuel Molina. But yeah, that's been ordered by the EBU. Deadline for the purse offers 4th of September, my birthday. There we go. Happy birthday. Let's have a super lightweight European title build.
First big party.
There we go, mate. First big party. It's all the rage nowadays. But yeah, the name that has obviously been linked with throughout the last probably 18 months is Dalton Smith. They've been kind of building on opposite ends or opposite sides of the street or whatever we want to call it nowadays.
I just can't see it happening though.
Not for a long time, I don't think.
Not until they'll both be thinking, like, all their camps and everyone around them, like they're both going to get the world level. Maybe, and potentially they both can, but then let's do it then when it's more money. I'm not a huge fan of that, but that's the way that's going to go.
Well, for every kind of Groves to Gale, I mean, they didn't rematch as pros, but for every Groves to Gale, we box at this and then we can maybe do one here and one there. There's a Frampton Quigg where it's like, okay, we could have boxed at British title level, but we ended up getting paid 20, 30 times more to box for a world title.
Then there's also too many of Murray and Macklin and Murray and
that we don't see.
Andy Lee and Bark and all those mixed heads and fight each other. You know what I mean? Like no one's to blame. Well, everyone's to blame. Who knows? But the fighters are to fight anyone if the money's right and they're told what to do. But we miss out because you had fighters there who could have all won a world title. That's where you look at it. Let's all get a title first, and then we'll all fight off each other. But the timings were all wrong for them. They all had their real successes at the different times, didn't they? Really. So yeah, but. He's a real talent, and I think he can go all the way. I think but we don't know yet. It's still too early to say. But give him the test, and if he after this one, give him a decent test, and if he goes there, step him up another level. Like, by the end of the year, put him in Jiggett. That's a world-class fighter, Jiggett, who just can't win a world title, who will never win a world title because he doesn't hit hard enough and he's a little bit scrappy. But do that. And also he's an actually lighter bloke. So but you
stack the odds in your favour as much as you.
That's the other name
that's
that
Jiggett could box.
Baranchik's a name that people have been talking about for a while.
Ivan Baranchik. He's too vulnerable. Like, you just think like that version of him now. That Zepeda fight. Obviously, if you haven't watched Baranchik versus Zepeda, or how many knockdowns was that? 7 knockdowns, 8 knockdowns, or something like that. I thought the Josh Taylor fight really took a lot out of Baranchik. That was a really hard fight for both of them. Like, Baranchik got dropped twice. He was still firing.
So you don't think there'll be any point in it?
Me personally, not really. I mean, he's obviously a world champion at 140 pounds. He can punch, so if he lands, but I mean,
but that's the test though for him. So he's a guy who can punch. I mean, and also aesthetically how he looks. So he's a guy who can punch. Being a former world champion, that's the perfect fight, actually, because it might be an easier fight in reality than what it looks on paper.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the name of the game, isn't it? Yeah, that's the name of the game with matchmaking. The other name that I've been mentioned, which I do quite like, is Mohammed Mamoun. I quite like that.
Oh, okay,
I quite like that one. I think that's that's not as sexy on paper as the Baranchik fight. He's not a former world champion. No. It doesn't have highlight reel knockouts and what have you. But I think that's somebody who's operated around the sort of level that Adam Azim would like to go over for quite a long time with good success. So I quite like that. But that, I think that's the same level really as Jiggett. I know Jiggett's down at 135, but he boxed for a while. He was in the series, wasn't he? He boxed Baranchik.
So I mean, he won the 140.
So I mean, now the stage of his career as well, he probably loved the fact that you don't have to make the weight as well.
Yeah.
And he's been active. You think he boxed Keyshawn Davis earlier this year? He boxed Dennis Baranchik. Even Baranchik, you got me confused now. But Andy, is that a fight that you think we could see anytime soon? Adam Azim versus Dalton Smith, or is that just a pipe dream?
I don't think so, because for all the reasons we've outlined, and I think it is fair enough to. It's just unusual to make that kind of match at this stage. I mean, it's not like a defeat for either one of them would be, fatal or anything like that, but it kind of feels like it. And if you're on the promotional side of it, Matchroom have put a lot into Dalton Smith, and I know they had a decision to make earlier in the year, because he turned up on a Sky card boxing Casey Benjamin, but because they won the purse bids basically. But off the back of that, I think he was a free agent, or around about then that time, and he could have gone anywhere. But he re-signed with Matchroom, I think, for another 3 fights, I think. And he's been rattling through them. But I don't see any reason why, even if they did end up in the same stable for whatever reason, you're not going to want to put them against each other, I don't think. It just doesn't really make any sense.
It depends how you look at it, because you look at Adam Azim as a pay-per-view. No, it's not like a headliner anymore. It was a pay-per-view.
Yeah, it's not good enough to be a future world champion.
So you look at Dalton Smith now, and you go, he's a headliner potentially, but he hasn't shown yet with his style, which he's very good. I love to watch him. I mean, he hasn't got that razzmatazz as maybe Azim has. Doesn't seem to have that following yet, what Azim looks like potentially can have. So the markability for him to be a pay-per-view star is much less. Seems less likely. You know what I mean? You'd have to be fighting bigger names and become that through them, if you know what I mean. So
it's the whole A side B side thing, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, so there might be a thing there if they think Adam could bash him up. If they had that much confidence in him, then they go, put him in with him. But otherwise, you run in parallel, don't you? If you're in the same camp. If you've got 2 pay-per-view stars, you're not going to risk that, are you? By fighting them off against each other. But that might not be the case. But it's a hard fight for both of them. Even right now, Dalton's much more experienced and showing he's a real clever, good fighter, Dalton Smith. He really is. And it's not all obvious how good he is either, I don't think. I mean, we see it, but I think the general public who just watch boxing as a hobby won't notice how good how potentially special he is. But with Azim, you can see it straight away, because he's fast and explosive and jumps into his shots, and there's a wow factor. But
it's kind of what gives him that crossover casual market.
Yeah. So he's a good kid, and he has a lot of potential. There's still a long way to go yet, and there'll be hiccups along the way for sure. But as you said, and you mentioned that. No, you said it. You didn't say fuck all. But he's with the McGuigans, and they do have a fantastic history and pedigree and how to maneuver a fighter to a world level with the right tests. They might be different to what they did with Josh Taylor. I'm just pointing with Josh Taylor, really. What they did with him was phenomenal.
Probably turn Chris Billam-Smith into a world champion, which, with all due respect to Chris, I mean, that is a sizable achievement.
Lucky to be sat in my chair. And even the Frampton, you had sort of like seemed like a shooting for a world title with Carl Frampton, but still you had to give him the right test on the way.
Kiko Martinez for European title.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but the Josh Taylor one was the perfect thing for his ability. So they know what it's like when you have a special talent, which Josh Taylor was, and maybe still is, but certainly was. Then out of nowhere, the risk worth taking to get him there. If they're the same way. Who's are they his management team as well?
Yeah.
So they're all in then. So yeah, they know what to do. They know the right thing.
He's talking one of the names. He's actually been talking about the name for a while. It's George Kambosos. He's mentioned that loads of times, hasn't he? Over probably the last year or so, when he was like 4-5-0. It kind of shows where, I mean, you hear some fighters. I actually really like it because you nowadays I feel like sportsmen in general are becoming more like politicians, and none more so than definitely footballers, but boxers after the fight. And so, who do you want next? And what do you want? Oh, well, the team. Great, sit down, talk about the team, need to watch it back, all of that stuff. You say to Azim, who do you want to fight next? I want to fight the champions. I want to fight them now. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that you throw them in with them, but it's nice to hear that, isn't it? It's nice to hear that.
We kind of have to have someone's name
put our fighters down when they say stuff like that,
You've got to have someone's name in your mouth. It's the one thing that can be learned from watching the influencer boxers is that they do that. They know, and I know it's a bit more choreographed and it's not proper boxing, but that side of it, shout somebody's name all day after their fight.
Shout somebody's name, get them in the ring, face off, make a fight.
Do all of that. Yeah. It's really important. It is, and my heart does sink a bit when I hear someone say, "Well, I just concentrate on the fighting and I let my team," and you just think, "No, that's not." You don't. It doesn't mean you have to change your personality. Just say someone's name. You don't have to try and behave in a way that's not you. But just say, "No, I want to fight. I want to fight Andy Clarke. He's running from me. I want him next. Look down the barrel of the camera. You don't have to go full WWE, but just have someone's name in your mouth always."
Fighter I do quite like for. Maybe not the next fight, maybe not even the fight afterwards, but for Adam Azim and Dalton Smith. Richard Commey's up at 140. Just been stopped by Jose Ramirez. Don't think he's quite what he was, but in a couple of fights, he's durable, he's experienced, he can punch a little bit, and he's naturally a lightweight as well.
I think he punch a lot. I do.
Commey, I think he's potentially a little, and a couple of more fights. I think that's a good name.
No, it is a good name because that's that perfect thing about. No, that's that banana skin fight, isn't it? That you sort of need to see him in, really.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see Adam Azim and Dalton Smith kind of chasing the same. Well, they are chasing the same opponents. Both want to box for a European title. Yeah. They're going to be kind of compared throughout their career, which is only good. Whether or not we see the fight is down to Eddie Hearn and Ben Shalom. They're big friends of each other, so I'm sure that'll happen.
Lewis Ritson wants. Oh no, is he at welterweight now?
Lewis Ritson's at welterweight and is going to fight Pat McCormack.
I saw him the other day. Bless him.
Was he doing that?
He watched the side of Patterson waiting to be announced, and he just went.
We looked over at him in the third round when Patterson got dropped, and he was literally sitting there like that. You should feel so bad for him. But yeah. Anyway.
Wow.
Moving on, the final fight that we will discuss this weekend, we see the return of Big Frazer Clarke, fresh off his 10-round decision win over Marius Vac at a sweltering hot York Hall. Returns against a certain Dave Allen, who we've not seen for a little while. I think, he's boxed since, but obviously the highest profile last fight that we saw of him was against David Price. I think it was 4 years ago now, so it's been a little while. Thoughts on the fight, Andy?
When it was made, I didn't like it. I'll admit that. I didn't like it because I thought when Dave retired, I was happy to see him retire. I thought it was the right thing. I think he'd had a lot of hard fights, and I was happy to see him hang him up because I think that he's been quite smart with his money. He's bought property. But I've watched a few interviews with him recently, and he's now training with Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis, and that was the plan for a while, but it hadn't ended up happening because he couldn't really afford to commit to moving away for financial reasons for camp and stuff like that. But what he was saying, and I don't know whether I'm just kind of not drinking the Kool-Aid exactly, but because I want to be convinced, because I don't want to see him on the end of a hiding. Yeah, and people will say that too, because I'm commenting. People will say that, though.
No.
They will say that. But, I mean, he is pretty convincing, Dave. But what he was saying, basically, is that, look, I've had a good rest, basically, physically and mentally, over the last 3 years or whatever it is. And mentally, quite a lot's changed. I've grown up, was basically what he's saying. I've got a couple of kids now. My priorities are different. This idea of just being the kind of tough guy who comes forward and fights with his face and takes on all comers and all challenges and all of that, that's not I'm past that, but I can box. I do have a decent ability level, and I believe that I can cause Frazer Clarke serious problems and that I can beat him. And listening to him say it, he didn't convince me that he's going to win, but it convinced me that he's still got something to give, and that this isn't necessarily what I feared it would be. And we'll find out. We'll find out on the night. But I know that Jamie and Travis are upbeat about what they've seen from him. And with those two, with the track record they've got and the way they kind of handled Tommy Coyle and towards the end and the stoppage against Algieri and kind of
Frampton as well.
Yeah, and with Frampton, they there's nothing to suggest that they would take somebody on if they felt like all he was there for was to get lined up and battered. I just don't. He'd have to go somewhere else for that. I don't see them doing that.
Barry?
Yeah, I would say, I don't get much of a chance, that's the truth. But he's full of confidence. I've heard a few interviews with him. Did one with us, actually. But it's hard to ask for him. I do think that. And even though he's been fighting still, this is a different level here. And also Frazer got some pressure on himself to put on a good performance. I didn't think he boxed that bad against Vac, but he got criticised heavily for it, didn't he? Because he should have done more, should have stopped all the stuff. But
he was kind of unlucky that it ended up being top of the bill, wasn't he? Because
he
wasn't supposed to be.
Yeah. We spoke about it when we did the review. It was missing Adam Azim. He was missing Adam Azim coming out as the headliner and knocking someone out in a couple of rounds. If he does that, then the show is a bit more palatable, should we say.
But Dave Allen, he's well known. The way he trained most of his career was just ludicrous. Like we all back in the 90s, the way some of us trained with the equipment or on your own and all that, like you wouldn't believe it. You go, how can you call yourself a professional athlete the way you trained? I mean, we trained hard, but it's just no equipment and no stuff. And I trained myself in my last fight. It's ridiculous, It's just weird though. And there's loads of stories of that. I'm not an exception, but like. In doing that in this era, or certainly when Dave Allen's been boxing, when everyone's training so much smarter and better, put him at a bit more of a disadvantage. So maybe he can be a better fighter. I think he's technically quite good. He's smooth. He got some lovely skills. He's sort of bigger than what he seems as well. He doesn't look that big, but he's
a natural big man, like 5.
Yeah. Not that tall, but he's a
big lad.
And he's not the tallest for a heavyweight. He's tall. He's got 6'3", and but he used it well because he can throw that right hand over the top. He dips the head over quite well, and he's smooth. He don't really load up with his shots, so he can walk you down. So there's potential to give people a problem. I just think with Frazer, he might be eating jabs all night. That's what I think. But so he just got to start fast. That's what I would say. And I think he's the sort of guy who might commit to himself, to his belief as well. If he thinks this, I got to start fast and get on him on his chest early and get him out of his rhythm. Like with any guy who's technically quite good, like Frazer is, you get him out of their rhythm really, and less experienced in the professional game, you get them with their rhythm, put your head in their face, elbows, all that stuff that we'll be moaning about. But do that really quick. Hit him early as well. He could give Frazer a difficult night, but I still can't see how he beats him. And I don't think he will give him a difficult night either. I think he'll come forward, but I do think Frazer will catch him as he comes forward.
The lack of activity, as we kind of mentioned there, I've got Dave Allen's record in front of me. He obviously boxed Dorian Darch after the David Price fight, not the same level as that fight. But so since then, we've got 8 rounds in nearly 4 years for Dave Allen. Obviously not an ideal preparation for going in there against someone like, particularly Frazer Clarke, on the back of the VAC performance, which I think, I agree with you, that was the perfect opponent for that time. People may not like it. They certainly didn't like it as a headline event, and particularly being in York Hall in the middle of summer didn't help matters. But I felt like that was exactly what he needed as a pro. I think that was the perfect fight for him. And now going into this fight, you've got Frazer Clarke, who's had the fight that he probably needed before going any further.
But also got a bit of pressure to perform.
Yeah.
Which is good for him.
Yeah, I think he needs that.
Yeah.
Particularly, the way that Frazer Clarke's career started, by his own admission, wasn't ideal. Didn't have the opponents that he would have wanted. He had a hand injury. I think people would kind of thought that he was going to be some sort of heavyweight Lomachenko and boxing for world titles immediately because he'd been in the amateurs for plenty of time. So every time he was out, he was like, "Oh, you're looking to move quick," and he was like, "Whoa, I'm going to move how I want to move." But the roundabout point I was making is that Dave Allen doesn't necessarily have that opponent. He doesn't have 10 rounds. It would have been good to see him go 8 rounds potentially against a lower level opponent before going in there with Frazer Clarke. Do you think that's fair to say, Andy?
Yeah, no, I think that is fair. But I guess what I would say about that too is that I prefer seeing him go into this fight, Dave, with what he's done in the last 3 years rather than another 3 years worth of the fights he was having before, because that would be a load more miles on the clock. And the fight against Price was very, very tough. Yeah. And obviously he collapsed in the dressing room afterwards. I think, didn't he? Collapsed after the fight. He was taken to hospital, and he was working with Darren at the time, Darren Barker, who I know afterwards said to him, "Listen, I think that should be enough for you now. And I care about you. So if you're going to keep going, I'm afraid it's not going to be with me." And he chose to keep going. Then he did retire, but as I understand it, the retirement was more out of disillusionment with the business side more than anything else. There was that whole scenario where he was going to box Christian Hammer, and then Hammer had to pull out, and then he was going to box Chris Lovejoy, and then that didn't happen. And there were a few other things that went on as well, I think. And he just thought, actually, you know what? I've made some good money from this, and I don't know if I really want to swallow all of this stuff anymore. Yeah.
Sometimes the money, unless you're in millions, the money's not comfort enough for the stress and the disappointment of being told,
and the danger as well,
being told lies consistently. Yeah. That's why you're sold lies consistently all the time. People look after you, and you get the opportunities. Of course, you've got to be thankful for that. But you're told you'll spend more lies and promises and empty promises, and you really are. Or no one calls you back, and you can't understand why. And so it's a very disillusional sport.
I think he would love to win a title. I mean, he had the opportunity to win one against Lenroy Thomas. And he kind of froze a bit at Bramall Lane that night. It was really close and he didn't get it. And I thought it was fair enough that he didn't get it. But at the same time, he just didn't really let his hands go. And he could have won that fight. And that was a very winnable fight for a Commonwealth title. And that was what was supposed to happen. that's why that match was made. Then there was the rematch and the head clash, and that kind of disappeared. So I think that's probably that's his aim, because he has made good money from boxing. It was suggested to him in one of the things I watched that people would say, would you say with your ability that you've kind of underachieved? And he said, well, it depends how you look at it, because I'm not claiming to be some kind of supersonic fighter. Maybe, yeah, I just feel like there's a title level that I could get to that I haven't yet. But financially, you could say that I've overachieved, because he'd ride in and save the day for pay-per-views every now and again for a reasonably placed slot on the bill, and then he had that night against Lucas Brown where he was top of the card. So I think money wise he will have done.
And heavyweight,
yeah, exactly.
He was overpaid, didn't he?
Yeah, well paid for the day.
Yeah, so I think money wise he will have done well, but that'll be why, as I say, I think he's invested it and been quite clever with it. That'll be why this isn't about that. I don't think. I think he just thinks, actually, I can do this. I do have some ability, and I don't really want to go before I've had a British title shot, maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, and I've listened to a couple of his interviews recently. He spoke to Ryan a couple of weeks ago, and he does sound a lot more upbeat, I suppose, clear-headed with the industry and with the boxing business. We all heard kind of all of the stories about him hard sparring up at GB with Joshua. Frazer Clarke would have been one of them as well.
He went and sparred Usyk, didn't he?
Yeah, and that which kind of did the rounds again recently this week. Of course, kind of he was, by all intents and purposes, stopped in the spar. Yeah,
he was out on his feet.
So that kind of did the rounds again.
The spar, basically.
But he had, I mean, kind of, he was the tough guy. You know, he boxed Luis Ortiz. He had his tongue split in half and all of that.
Tony Yoka.
Yeah, like he
short notice jobs.
So one would hope that, you know, regardless of outcome this weekend, that he's, you know, fit and able to box and give up a good show and give up a good performance against Frazer Clarke. I do feel like the inactivity and maybe even regardless of that fact, would he beat Frazer Clarke? I mean, I think Frazer Clarke would always be a favourite if they box, regardless of whether Dave Allen was active or not. So yeah, we look forward to seeing that. I think that's probably all we've got time for today. For our back-to-back episodes of the Boxing Show. If you didn't see it, go check out the one that we put out yesterday. So it is going to be prediction time. No, it's not double. It's just
double time,
injury time. Injury time.
I will if you will.
Yeah. Oh, for fuck's sake, it cost myself a load of money. But anyway, not a load of money. No.
Yeah, and it's not as well, by the way.
Anyway, moving on. Predictions. Andy, we're going to come to you first. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way up this time. So we'll start with the fight that we've just discussed, Frazer Clarke. You're working the card.
Yeah, all I can do is just be boring and say who I feel is the favourite.
Okay, who's the favourite, Andy?
Well, so Frazer Clarke is a strong favourite.
Okay, that's enough out of you.
Azim is a strong favourite.
Yeah.
Heffron, Cullen is a 50-50 fight, and Liam Smith is a strong favourite. Let's just get that out of the way, and then you can talk about it properly.
Barry, give us some proper predictions here. Come on.
I think Frazer Clarke stops Dave Allen.
Do you think he stops him as in he puts him out, or corner, or ref, or
either or? I think you can knock him out and wear him down.
Right.
See, the thing with Allen is the wear and tear. So you might train hard and be fresh, but it's still in you. Like, and if he has that still, which there's a worry that he might be too much on him, then the accuracy of Clarke will expose that, I think. So I think it'd be a good fight, entertaining fight, and a competitive fight for a couple of rounds. But then I think Frazer lines him up. I think, yeah.
Adam Azim versus, you said earlier that you didn't watch him, but these are terrible predictions. So let's go for Mark Heffron versus Jack Cullen.
Mark Heffron, I think Heffron gets a stoppage, but I think it's going to take him a while. What is it? 10 rounder?
It'd be 12 for the British title.
Oh, it's the British title. Yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah, of course it is. Yeah, 1 round ago.
And Commonwealth, I think.
Is it?
Sorry.
I trust.
I didn't. Yeah. I wasn't sure that Cullen was ready. Was mandated for the British title. Oh,
I don't know.
Anyway, who cares? But it's good. It's good. Yeah, I think it'd be. I think he gets him in about round 8 or 9. I think it'll take a while. I think it'd be Cullen trying to win. That gets it. I think gets caught throwing. I do.
So what? Just so you know, what was supposed to happen with that was Heffron was supposed to be boxing Zach Chelly.
Yeah,
and the Commonwealth silver title, didn't he?
Heffron pulled out of the fight against Zach Chelly with an injury, so Chelly boxed Mark Jeffers. Mark Jeffers beat him, and then Heffron Cullen was made.
Okay, cool, right, and then final one for you, Barry: Liam Smith versus Chris Eubank Jr.
Smith on points. With all the things I've said, I think he goes about the fight the same way. I think Eubank would have learned a little bit of a lesson and not be a little bit more focused. I think he'll try and be more assertive. But I think every time he stops throwing, I think Smith jumps on him. And then I think like I thought in the first fight, I think after 8 rounds, I think that it becomes Smith's fight. Really do. I think the gaps between the work of Eubank will get bigger. And the bigger the gaps when he's not working, the more work Smith will do. I think he takes it. I think he wins. I think the fight will look close, but Smith will have the second half will be pretty much all his. And I think he'll be a clear winner in a hard fought fight. Yeah,
clear winner.
It'd be a good fight. It'd be a good fight. I think it'd be a really good fight to watch. I do, because we know how tough Eubank is. But I do. I'm going for Liam Smith on points. If I can say that without mumbling.
There you go. I'll give mine for what they're worth. Frazer Clarke versus Dave Allen. I think Frazer Clarke wins by stoppage in the second half of the fight, but I think that Dave Allen finishes the fight on his feet. Too tough for his own good. I think that Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis will maybe spare him from unnecessary punishment.
Oh yeah, they'll get him out of there if they feel it's going one way.
Whoa, don't keep it working.
Adam Azim versus Aram Fanyan. I think Adam Azim wins about 4-5. Mark Heffron versus Jack Cullen, very similarly to you. I think Jack Cullen will come and will have a go, but similarly to some of his other fights, really. Felix Cash was similar. Kevin Sajo was similar. He comes, he has a go, but I think the natural size and punching power of Mark Heffron, even though Jack Cullen's obviously very, very tall, I think Heffron is the more natural super middleweight, and I think that Heffron will stop him maybe 7, 8. And Liam Smith versus Chris Eubank Jr. I really don't know. But I think I edge towards Liam Smith, and I think he will get the stoppage again in the second half of the fight. I think that Eubank, the inability to fight the 3 minutes of each round, I can't imagine how, no matter how mentally strong you are, that it can't be in the mind. When what you said earlier is so telling and so true, that there was this complete disregard of any likelihood of that potentially happening. And I just feel like the inability to fight 3 minutes of each round, and Smith, I think, was on his way to fighting that sort of fight before he caught him in the first fight anyway. And I can see Liam Smith maybe around 9 or 10. Which is mad. I'm backing Chris Eubank Jr. to win by stoppage, to lose by stoppage rather, which is not something that I thought I'd be doing anytime soon. But let us know how you feel this weekend will pan out. But from us here at ID Towers, thanks very much for stopping by. Thank you to our esteemed panel of Barry Jones and Mr. Andy Clarke for stopping by, and we'll catch up with you next time.